good to be with you all today. You know, when I was on the internet, I had seen this quote from Jimmy Fallon, and he had said that NASA had received a numbered record of applicants, 18,000 applicants in 1 week. And NASA said it showed a growing interest in people wanting to apply to their aeronautical program. And people said, nah, we just want to get off the planet before the next election. And what we're going to be talking about today is creating an expectancy of good in today's political climate. And the purpose of our talk today is to inspire ourselves to take on ourselves in the world in a way that's powerful, in a way where we really know who we are, and give up our resignation that we can make a difference, and give up any barriers or limitations. You know, we know that God is good, that God is all, that God is infinite, that God is all-powerful. We know this. But so often when we're faced with the conversations that are going on in our political climate, we are faced with a number of responses. Sometimes I know my response has been, as a science of mind practitioner, that I don't want to include any negative energy in my space. So I have taken on the ostrich effect. I'm not looking at it, I don't want to know too much, right? So there's the whole, I don't want to be infected by the negativity. There's the other approach where, we get all into it. There have been elections where I've gotten all into it, and I've done get out the vote efforts, and, I've knocked on doors, and I've, gotten really involved in the process. And then there's the approach where we just need to know just enough to be able to make the decision and be done with it and hope for the best, right? And so there's all of these different ways of approaching these conversations that are going on. A lot of times when we start talking about the political issues altogether, our initial response is just to be like, I don't know if I don't want to deal with that. There are a number of responses, as I mentioned. I've done all three of those responses, but lately I found myself turning to the alternative approach of becoming completely immersed in everything that's going on, and having this morbid conversation about who said what, when, and what happened now, and kind of watching TV from the kind of morbid fascination one would have when you pass a train wreck and you're kind of looking to see if you see any bodies in there. That's kind of it. The thing is that this particular election has brought up a lot of personal issues for me. I'm one of the most diverse people I know. And I'm half Native American. I'm a member of the Hickory Apache tribe, the Hickory Apache Nation. I'm also, according to Ancestry.com DNA, I'm a third Black, I'm Asian, I'm white as well. So I'm like this whole, diversity thing going on. In addition, Annette is my wife. I'm married to a woman. I've been a single parent. I've dealt with every issue they're talking about today. I've been on every end of the tax spectrum, from the good to the bad. I've dealt with abortion issues in my life. I've dealt with, everything they're talking about. I have some stake in it. I've dealt with racial discrimination, sexual discrimination, height discrimination. I mean, you name it. I have a story that I have suffered that particular thing, right? And everything that's being talked about matters. So then the question is that, and I also think about what I care about. I care about what happens in the environment. I care about what happens with other people. I care about people that are displaced and homeless. I want to see children be safe across not just in my hometown, but in my country and in other countries. It matters to me how we treat the creatures in the sea and how we treat the creatures on this planet. All of those things matter to me. And so it's kind of funny because we see these things in our world, and we realize that we can't just happy thought them away. We can't just say, oh, well, we're just going to think a good thought and hope that it all works out. What do we do, though, when we see a world where there's a haze of obstacles and confusion? As New Thought practitioners, This is not the time to be silent. I'm reminded of the story of from the Bible of Queen Esther and Mordecai. She won this beauty pageant, which made her the queen. And the king, due to a kind of angry policy advisor, was going to kill all the Jewish people in the kingdom. And she goes to her uncle, "What do I do?" She hadn't told the king that she was Jewish. And he says, "Well, who's to say that you weren't brought to the kingdom for such a time as this?" And I think that and she went on to save the people, and the policy advisor that gave that terrible advice got hanged. The thing is that who are we as spiritual practitioners in this political climate, in the world as it is now? We have a message. We have a thought. We have a new thought, ancient wisdom. And who's to say that we were not brought into this time in history, into this political climate, into this situation for such a time as this? This isn't the time for us to be an ostrich, to put our head in the sand and hope that it will pass. This is the time to actually take on who we are from a spiritual conversation. Not necessarily, we talk about treat and lose our feet. Each of us has the power to make a powerful change in the world. But sometimes I think we can look at our lives and say, well, I haven't paid off all my credit card bills, and I'm having trouble with, I've been trying to lose that same 10 pounds for the last 30 years. And we look at these things in our lives and use them as evidence that we aren't as powerful as we really are. But our belief in our own powerlessness is an absolute lie. And we know that. We know that as science of mind practitioners, people who are in this thought, we know that we have this infinite source within us, and that what we believe and what we declare actually occurs in any situation, whether it's huge, whether it seems insurmountable, or if it's something as small as tying our shoe. How it goes is up to us, and we have an absolute say in that. So if we have a relationship to our own problems that has us believe that we are powerless, then what we do is, sometimes people think, well, you take care of home first and then you go out into the world. And I'm suggesting that we do both things at the same time, that we take on our lives and we take on the world at the same time, that we don't differentiate between those two. Because in the mind of God, there is no big and no little. There is no powerlessness and powerful. There is only God. And there is only God expressing as us. Our first step is to tap into what we have within us. We tap into the spiritual realm. And the way that we get to that spiritual realm is tapping into the silence and the stillness within us. There's a story about the Buddha. He was traveling with some of his disciples, and they were going over this large body of water. It was a lake. And the Buddha told one of his disciples, "Can you get me some water so I can drink it?" So the disciple went to go get, with a pot of water, to get some of the water. And when he got there, this bullock cart just ran right through the area. So the water was muddy. So he came back and said, "Buddha, I can't get you that water because it's too muddy right now." And so he says, "That's okay, go back." So about a half an hour, he says, "Go try to see if you can get the water again." And it was still too muddy, and there was the sediment and all of that. He says, "It's still too muddy." He says, "Okay, just wait." So they waited a little longer. And he says, "Go back and try again." So the third time, after some time, he went back, he took the pot, and the water was clear, and he brought that pot of water to the Buddha for him to drink. The Buddha says, "See how powerful you are? You cleared all of that water." He says, "Well, how did I do that?" He says, "You let it be. You let the sediment settle, and you let it be." And then that brought clarity. And when we start thinking about these situations, rather than fighting it, rather being against something, rather than resisting these conversations, rather than having judgments about how we think it should be, and we need to fight to make sure that that doesn't happen, instead of taking on this war, we could just let it be. Let the sediment sink to the bottom. When we start thinking about internalizing it in our hearts, allow it to be. And when we do, that perfect clarity that light of God shines through, that light can shine through that water and be within us in a clear space. How do we do that? Well, one of the first things that we need to do, I suggest, is stop fighting the things that cloud our clarity. When I mentioned that I felt I was the most diverse person on the planet, one of the things is that when I start thinking about things that I experienced in the past, I had a victim story. And so what's so unique about this particular political situation right now is so many people are triggered. I had a practitioner, when I was taking practitioner studies, one of my teachers said, "I may have pushed your button, but I didn't install it." Right? So when we're triggered around the things that are going on in this political climate, what's important to do is to realize that that trigger isn't out there somewhere. That trigger's in here. And whenever we are triggered, it's the courtesy of the rattlesnake to rattle to let you know it's there. Because once we know that we are triggered about that, it isn't about fighting that person on the outside. It's not about fighting that situation on the outside. It's about getting the clarity in here. It's about letting the sediment settle. It's about moving from a victim consciousness where something happened to me and I couldn't do anything about it. Moving from a manifestor consciousness where I have to change things myself, I have to push this through. And being more and more a vehicle for the divine to flow through us, to flow through and as us, until we realize that this isn't something that we do, that this conversation isn't a doing conversation, it's a being conversation. It's a conversation about being that light of clarity that flows from us, through us, as us. That is the ultimate place. So whenever we turn on that news and one candidate said something and the other one is lying, and what's the most important way we can listen to that? Is listen to what's going on in here. What are my reactions to this? Because here's the thing. We are not fighting the sediment. When we fight the sediment in our minds, what do? We kick it up some more, right? The more we fight that thing, the less clarity we have. We've been, when we have that clarity, we are more able to understand the concept of God's grace. And what is God's grace? God's grace is that infinite power in the universe that has the flow and the ebb of nature occur. God's grace lives in us as this beauty, as this nectar, as this richness. It is God's grace that has us get up in the morning. It is God's grace that puts meat on our table. It is God's grace that has us convert food into energy. It is God's grace that is all. It is the moving force in the universe, and it lives in us. Ernest Tone, the founder of religious science, says there's a power in the universe for good, and we can use it. And Ken Gordon has said that we are also shifting that to know that there is a power for good in the universe, and it can use me. We are the embodiment in the most miraculous ways, in the most individual of ways, of that grace manifesting on the planet. We are that infinite grace. So when we start having that clarity show up in our lives, it shows up as that infinite grace. In The Art of Spiritual Living, Joel Goldsmith writes that God's grace is infinite, divine, creative energy that works through us. That it is the font of inspiration, the life force. It is the difference between what is just meat and what is just life. We are not here to move the realm of the physical. We are here to move the realm of the spiritual. We are not here to deepen our experience of the illusion of physicality. We are here to deepen our experience of the divine in us. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. First, we do not seek the meat, the car, the house, the job. Those things will come as naturally as the lilies of the field are clothed. Those things will come as naturally as the sun rises in the sky. All we have to do is allow those things. But the first thing we seek is the kingdom of God within us. We seek for that clarity within us, knowing that it is already there. There is nothing to draw to us, but there is only allowing Spirit to express in its beauty, in its manifold expression through us in a way that it can only express through us, because each of us is a unique manifestation of that divine power. So we're not seeking to change the world. We're seeking to change our hearts first. We're seeking to create a transformation within us that is so powerful. You know, when we do that, one of the classes I was taking in my ministerial studies, we were studying the ancient Indian Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. And one of the Upanishads talk about that the glory of God is so powerful, it is so bright, that it dims the sun. And that light lives within us. That light is so powerful that we have the ability to be what they call the vibhuti. The vibhuti are the people like the Martin Luther Kings. The vibhuti are people like, Bill Gates, who created miraculous things around communication. The vibhuti are people like, I would call Obama. That's my political thing. Where you have someone who comes and shifts consciousness in a way that's powerful. That vibhuti lives within us. It is a gift. And each of us has our own way of being that light that is so powerful that it dims the sun, that it makes the sun seem like a mere candle. The power of God is that miraculous. All we have to do is trust it. When we clear away our attachment to creating things in the physical realm, and we tap into that clarity of spirit within us, we are able to tap into what God is, what God expresses on this planet as us. We are able to tap into the world that works for everyone, because that is who we are. And I know for a fact that there is a world that exists in the spiritual realm where every child has a place to live, where no child lives in a country at war, where we have people who are politicians, who are divinely guided, who are sage kings of old, who are divinely guided with wisdom and knowledge and understanding, where the Solomons come to the planet, where people who are inherently good express that goodness on this planet, where we have enough food to feed everyone, where we have enough people who have clothing, where the compassion of our people expands through the entire world. I know that this spiritual world exists right now because I have it in my heart, and I know that it is the truth. And I know that it is the truth inside of every person here who has this God of love, this God of infinite abundance, this God of power, this God of light, this God that is nothing but love. That God lives in me. That God lives in you. That is the expression of our planet right now. There is no other truth other than this is what's real. And I declare it with every fiber of my being that this is the world that we live in. And this is the world that we are brought into this kingdom right now to create. We are created and brought into this planet for such a time as this. That is who we are. Absolutely. And all we do is allow. And once we have that clarity, it's a being. But does that mean that you don't do? Now, I said it was a being conversation, not a doing conversation. But we also have a famous saying around here. It's called treat and move your feet. Right? If you start with the doing, before you have clarity, you are roughing up the sediment. If you have clarity, and you are the embodiment of God on this planet, it is as if Christ consciousness, Jesus himself, walked in this room and said, there will be light, and there will be light. That God consciousness of the power of the word in you, not just manifesting in your life as prosperity, abundance, health, wholeness, divine beauty. You radiate that light. You are a transformative effect on this planet. Every person that you come in contact with is drawn to the light in you. It becomes a conversation of namaste. The God in me honors and recognizes the God in you. And what starts happening is you start seeing the universe conspiring for this good to manifest itself in the most idiosyncrasy of ways. It starts to manifest in, wow, isn't it interesting that I ran into that person? And you start making a difference on this planet because you started here, and then you do. And your doing is blessed beyond measure because it is an expression, a natural expression of the divine. So yes, go vote. Yes, knock on doors. Yes, get politically active. But let's pray for our leaders. Let's not sit there and judge them, but know that it took something for them to stand forward and be accountable and see in them the namaste. We can only do that when we see in ourselves that God place. So, giving up our powerlessness, giving up our limited beliefs, giving up fighting against something, allow all of that to be, and allow Spirit to be the miracle it is through us. When we do that, we are the embodiment of a world that works for everyone. Namaste.